So this is an introduction to the idea of contour. We don't have contour stands at the university, and we don't specialise in it, but sometimes students feel the need to know how to make something that fits around the bust a little more than general pattern cutting would tell you. So I'm just going to draw a quick side view again of a body, if you like. So before we talked about the idea that there was a smooth line and then it tucked in away, but contour rather looks at the idea that with a bust there's a sharp point here and then you come into the waist. So rather than it being a smooth curve, it comes right in under. So this gives us kind of the ability to make something that fits above the bust, that maybe it fits right close up under the bust, that has a seam here, that has fancy seaming under it. So, you know, it gives you more leeway in the fit. So it might be that you have sorry, I've given her a rather strange droopy bosom. It might be that it has a seam that runs across that way. Okay? So that's what we're looking at. So it's more of an introduction to it than anything else. And then if, as you run through into your final year, you want to look at it more closely, then you just ask me. Okay. So that's, sorry, she has a very strange bosom, but never mind. It takes all sorts. The first things you need to do to be able to achieve that sort of ultra close fit is the same as you did on the previous exercise. So we're going to be moving the side seam in 2 centimetres on the front bust line, centimetre at the waist, moving it in at the back 1.5 on the bust line and at the waist. Again, I need to emphasise that these measurements are specific to the blocks that we use at the university and the mannequins that we have. And if you're wondering how I came to these measurements, basically I made up a bodice, fitted it to the mannequin and made notes of all the changes that needed to be made. That's these. Okay, so we're looking at a bodice. I'm going to draw one out a little bit more, well, let's hope it's a little bit more in keeping with what we're looking for. I'm going to say it's got this sort of line at the top. I'm going to say it's got a section that comes in under the bust. I'm going to say it's got a seam that runs across, although of course it could have a seam that ran up and down, or it could have a seam that ran at a diagonal, whatever. I'm going to give it a seam here, and that's it, I think. And keep it simple. So like I say, introduction to the idea of what you do with the concept of contouring. You'll note I haven't changed this curve dart yet, and there's a reason for that. I'm going to mark off this time that's 7 centimetres where we think the bust mass for a size 12 is. And if you can also keep in mind that the size 12s we talk about, they're an old style size 12 sample size, and they work out it really being like an 8, 10 in a sort of contemporary retail scenario. Okay, I am absolutely aware that nobody's breasts are this spherical, but this just gives us an idea of what we're working around. Okay, so if I'm making this line fit right up onto the bust, I'm probably going to give it maybe 0.5 below that line. So I'm going to come down by 0.5. I'm going to drop a line that runs through the centre of this dot, just to give me something to go by. Because what I'm wanting to do on that, at that point, is I want to increase the size of the dot by 1 centimetre at that under bust. And having something to come off at a right angle is just helping me achieve that. So if we mark the halfway point again on the dot, which is 9 centimetres up on my block, I'm going to want to be coming out that 0.7 as a minimum here. So again, I'm going to come out and do the 0.7. And what I'm going to do is I'm now going to join up in a much straighter way than we did on the 0Es. Straight down, that is going to be the seam. So what had been a very shaped dot is now, you'll note, very, very square. And this now means also that the dart runs, and I'm taking this right to the bust point, that the dart into the bust also takes up a lot more space. So I'm just going to block that all out for you. So that was 1 centimetre that we came out on either side. There. Okay. And I'm now looking back at my image. Lovely. So I need to plot this design line on, and I'm going to do it coming, I'm going to work out where I think that line is. I think that that's coming just above the bust line and from just below the bust line, but obviously that's a conversation for you to have with yourself about where it's going to be. Drawing that up, and then I'm coming here. I'm going to bring it a bit lower than the bust mass line, because I don't want it to look sort of matronly, which I think is what can happen if you don't narrow it a little bit. It can make even small breasts look kind of chunky. Unless, of course, that's the look you're going for. Right then, so I've got 2 lots of lines I want to match up at the other side of the darts. So I'm going to draw along the bust line, down the centre front, along that bottom edge, and down. And I'm going to swing this over, so exactly the same way as we did, so that I know I'm coming out on the same position of the underbust. And now I can sort of make a nice route with a nice follow through for that underside of the cup. Done. Oops, a bit wobbly in the drawing. Okay, and now I need to do that for the top line also. So I'm going to draw along the bust line, up to the top edge, down to the end of the dot. I'm then going to swing this around until that line hits the corresponding position on the other side of the dot. And I'm going to take this lower than we took the last bodice. So I'm going to come down here quite steeply and then flick off towards the back. I think that would be prettier. I think it's prettier than what I've drawn, actually. I think what I've done is more like that, which means I'm going to have to work out where that line's going to go. That'll be nice. Anyway, see, having to watch my my brain working here. So that's basically the cup section. Okay, so something else we need to run through for, and that is this as it runs through into the back. So I'm going to draw a bust line on. I'm going to draw the side seam in, and I'm going to draw that last bit of the top edge of the cup, and then I need to put this over towards the new back side seam and lay the side seam together so that I can now start to create a nice run through. So this was my coming down off my bust, running through. Let's have a look where that goes. Well, there we go, that's quite nice. And what I think I'll do on this one actually is we'll have the back cut all in one, because you can, because there's no shaping. So I'm going to draw along as far as to the dot, and I'm leaving it. I'm leaving that there for a moment. We'll sort it out when we trace off for the pattern. Okay, so pattern pieces. For the bust section, we're going to need to make decisions about where this line is going to be. You could do it all as a dart, so that bust section, if we look at it, it could have one dart. It could have a seam that ran from top to bottom. It could have a seam that runs across, but obviously you want it to be pretty, whatever it is. You want it to be nice, you want it to be flattering. So I'm thinking, on the chart that I've given you, it's a fairly straightforward situation like that. I'm going to give a diagonal, I think. Am I? Or, so let me work out what I think would be nice. I'll tell you what, let's not care whether it's nice or not, just to give you the gist of what's going to happen. So I'm coming along here, and then I'm going to follow that top line slightly. Yes, I think that'll be nice. It'll be like a midway between those two. Okay, so making the pattern. I'm going to give myself a balance mark here into the lower half, and here I need a balance mark at the bust point there, and I want them to either side, because believe me, when you've got these bits in your hand, you're going to want to know which way up they're going. So I'm going to trace off both of these simultaneously so that you can see what happens with them. So I'm going all the way around the outside edge of the shape that we've created, marking balance marks as I go. I've got that going to the side seam. There's all sorts of things you can do with the side seam. I'm going to trace off the top. Oh, sorry, I need to come down either side of the dart. With this top dart, I'm also going to I'm not convinced that top line is right, so I'm going to check. I'm measuring 7, that's 6.5, so this one needs to drop by 0.5. Okay, that looks better. I'm also going to do the dart right to the bust point. So if you remember, all our manipulations happen to the bust point. So those are the two sections. This is going to be the top, this is going to be the lower bust. Now I'm going to use a slashing method really to get rid of those darts so that what we end up with is a seam. So I suppose if we think back to what you did in the first year, this has most in common with making a princess line. So making a style line using darts, but it not ending up being a dart. So I'm closing up that dart. And now I need my sellotape. I'm not convinced I know where it is. Oh, here it is. Okay, I'm going to do the same with the top side. So I'm going to fold this dart out. So I could, well, I could cut it and swing it over. Oh look, and that second line I did is a good match. That's making me feel happier. Okay. What you will note, I hope, is that this is very pointy. This is a little bit pointy, that is very pointy. We don't want pointy. And what we're going to do now is sort of the equivalent of taking the taking the dart point away from the bust point. So I'm going to lower that by about 0.7. Like so. And then on that top one, I'm going to make it pretty straight. So I'm taking off, it's about 0.3 that's coming off of there. I'm now going to just check that those will fit back together. Lovely. And we can trace those off to make the pattern piece. I'm going to pop them under this page. And I'm going to pop a pin in it to stop it moving about. Okay, so again, please remember you're using a nice fine pen. You're probably being much more accurate than I'm being. I'd like to think so anyway. Making sure I've got my balance marks marked on. Now I'm telling you, now and for nothing, once you've got these pieces cut with their seam allowance, you're going to be totally reliant on the balance marks for putting them back together. So please don't skimp. So when I've traced it off along the line. That was the pointy line, the original one. I've done it along the smooth line. So the darts have completely disappeared, and what we have are nice style lines that incorporate the darts. But will be much smoother. So this is the lower bust. Or at the top. Could be upper bust. I'm just going to pop these back, taking those away from the other side. I'm really keen to know where the grain line should be on these. So if I lay this one out and use the bust line to give myself a grain line, it comes out in a very unexpected way, but that's the way you want it to come out. You want to go back to your original and you want to take the grain line from the bust line. So the top bust looks much more like you might expect it. The bottom bust is almost on the bias. So it's size 12. Size 12. I'm just going to mark it contour. Contour. And you will add your seam allowance on that. I am going to potentially shame myself because I've done this in a big fat pen, but I am going to just walk the seams to check that they would run back together and make sense. Oh, so far so good. Yes, yes, out a bit. So let's see where that has happened. That's why it's totally good to walk them twice, because I'm just gonna add on at that end, at the seam end, to make, so now I know that seam fits back together and that the notches match from the inside edge. So if I'm going to alter anything, I'd much prefer it was on the side seam. Lovely. Okay. So for the rest of the pattern pieces, you are going to trace around the centre front. It'll come down its original centre front, around the cup line that you've made. You'll put the balance mark in. It'll come down the side, the very altered side of the dart. Sorry, this is so wobbly. We know that the grain's going to run with the centre front on that one. For the next section, we're coming along down the side of the very altered centre front, waist dart, down the side seam in its new position, along the waistline. We're going to find its grain line by dropping down 90 degrees from the bust line. This is the centre front, this is the side front, it's contour, it's a size 12. Oh, both of the bust pieces, you need to cut a pair actually. Cut one pair, cut one pair. Now I know those have the information on, but they are a bit messy. When I'm making professionally, if you like, I usually use a sticky label, so at least everything's confined. So this will be cuts one, because I'll be having that on a fold. So if you were wanting to check the side seam, oh, I didn't put its notch on there. It's not helpful. That matches there, but if you were wanting to check this side seam against the back, you would need all of these pieces pinned together. Because this is how they're going to run through. So when I trace off the back in a moment, that's what we'll look at to check that the front and the back matches. Now I did say that we'd do some fancy footwork once we got to the back here. I've got a piece of paper big enough. No. Surely I have. No, it doesn't matter how much I look at it, it's not going to suddenly magic itself. Here, I'll go and cut a piece. I should be so annoyed but not surprised if this isn't big enough. Ah, by the skin of my teeth. Okay, so this section, I'm going to trace up the new side seam, and along the top of the dart, I'm just going to mark where the dart begins and ends, and leave it like that. I'm then going to make sure that I've got the same measurement down. So that's 4.4. That's kind of an awkward measurement, but there you go. Is that 4.4? Okay, 4.4. So this piece that I've traced off here, I'm now just going to slide it over so that it matches at the bottom edge and it matches at the top edge. And I'm going to continue drawing around up the centre back, whoops, up the centre back, and then I'm going to make a line that works well from the centre back into that side section, which actually cuts off the top but gives us a nice clean run through. Now we know on this piece that that's going to be a straight grain, and this will have seam allowance all around. So because this is straight, both sides of the dart are straight, we can butt those two pattern pieces up together and make one pattern piece of them. By the same token, because it's straight, we could pop as many seams into there as we wanted, but I'm keeping it really simple. There you go. I wasn't quite a genius. I thought I'd been by getting the right size piece of paper. So that's what sellotape's for. Okay, dokes. So then we're just going to check that this side seam matches up with the front. It does beautifully, and that the run through is nice, which it is. So boom, that's done. It just needs its seam allowance, the rest of its annotation, centre back, it's cut one pair. And then you've got a pattern that will fit under a bust, and it'll be a close fit. You can, with contour, start to shave a certain amount of measurement off as well. So, for instance, at the waist, usually in and around a whole waist, you can lose sort of up to about 4 or 5 centimetres, and the garment will make the person become the shape of the garment. But that's not something we're going to worry about in this particular session. So that is a very basic contour pattern where you take out all of the ease and some to be able to fit in around the bust. So hopefully that'll be helpful to you. Yeah, give it a go.